Time once again for the Ballpark Digest Broadcaster Chat. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler with the Lansing Lugnuts, repping South Bend. Mick Gillispie repping the Chicago Cubs, but he's got his Montgomery Biscuit shirt on. And Kevin Reichard with Ballpark Digest. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello, Jesse. Hello, Mick. Before we get rolling too fast, if you hear construction noises behind me, it's because I'm sort of in the middle of a construction zone right now here in Minneapolis. So it could be bad, it could be good. We'll see.
It's a pardon our dust situation. Mick, how are you?
Doing well. Excited about seeing baseball with a schedule now, kind of interesting looking at the way that it kind of lines up in 60 games, but doing well.
The schedule release was funny in terms of me being a part of the Blue Jays system, so I'm watching all the Blue Jays people. They didn't release the Blue Jays schedule for a little bit, so all the Blue Jays media is reading everybody else's schedule and going, okay, that's when we play the Orioles. All right, let's pull up the Rays. Okay, that's when we play the Rays. And just trying to write it all in until finally the Jays schedule came out.
And then a few people got it wrong. They had like half the games against the Yankees. So it said basically one Blue Jays beat writer of some sort. So they should do it simultaneously. They MLB's got to improve its communications these days because everyone's paying such close attention.
I know that there was criticism, baseball trying a schedule release. This is a football thing. I think that certain elements that are coming out of this unprecedented situation, if baseball can figure out a fun way to release schedules, why not? Whether it's opening day or something else, at the very least, there's part of baseball here that we can enjoy. All right.
Yeah.
So I'll just let that point sit in the air.
Yeah, no, well, look, I agree. I mean, it's always exciting the way the NFL does it because you don't know when the games start. You just know that who they're playing, right? And then that's kind of how they did it. And then all of a sudden, you see the schedule and, and people try to figure out what game they're going to go to. With this, it's the first thing I looked at with the Cubs schedule was where the season ends. And they have a long road trip to end the season, and that could be a really, really difficult way for them because, it's going to be tough to win on the road. It was anyway in the past, so that's for any team, So it's like you're in the playoffs, from the beginning. It's like a pennant race. I mean, really with 60 games, right? I mean, everybody's tied for first, right? And so I looked at that and I thought, it's going to be tough, I wonder what things are going to look like when they're going into that last stretch. But, it's weird, like you said, with the Blue Jays, because they didn't know where they were going to be playing. I know there's some issues with, getting people to their stadium and not, with COVID and everything else. They're going to play in Florida. They're playing in, in Toronto. And then, just trying to coordinate all that stuff.
It's such a rapid turnaround that, okay, negotiation has finished, deal has been made. Here's when we all are going to report to summer camp. And then, Toronto trying to work with the Canadian government. Would they be in Dunedin? Would they be in Toronto? Would they be in Buffalo? Would they be in Lansing? We were Plan D or Plan E, wherever we fall in the alphabet. So that felt like a mess. I do want to start with coronavirus in terms of there's everything that everybody already knows about at the major league level in terms of testing and the results with the holiday weekend. So just trying to fly it out to the Salt Lake City lab. But Kevin, we talk a lot about baseball at multiple levels. And right now, coronavirus is affecting multiple levels.
Yeah, I mean, you saw the Nationals yesterday scrap practice workout. You saw the Astros do it. You saw the Cardinals do it. And I don't know if it was yesterday, but the Dodgers had scrapped a workout as well along the way. And there's plenty of grumbling. Mike Rizzo took to an official statement from the team, posted everywhere saying this is not unacceptable. Chris Bryant, in a big interview, said we were promised daily tests. We've had one. And so you're seeing a lot of grumbling from the front lines about the COVID testing, the lack thereof, and the lack of lab results. And so David Price dropped out. Other players, I think, we'll see drop out as well as we approach the season.
Yeah, Nick Markakis most recently. got a friend who's part of the basketball tournament. The basketball tournament being played in the bubble in Columbus, Ohio, and they test teams continually. There was one team, passed. One player just tested positive, and they were disqualified as a team right before their very first game. I think they were the number 5 seed in the tournament. So
in MLS, FC Dallas tested negative in Dallas, took the charter to Orlando, first test, boom, 10 players and a coach tested positive. They're going home. They're not even going to participate in the MLS is back tournament now.
Do they with these things, do they retest them?
Yes.
You know, because I heard that there's like some issues with the testing sometimes, you know, like false negatives and stuff.
Well,
that'd be terrible.
I mean, on that subject, Joey Gallo tested positive, tested negative, tested positive. He's been asymptomatic this entire time. So there are those questions.
Yeah, and with the MLS example, the FC Dallas players and coaches were being tested with lab testing locally. When they got to Orlando, they then they did a different test with the MLS official testing lab, different lab. And so people are trying to figure out, well, did the status actually happen, or did the local testing lab screw up in Dallas? So, you know, these tests aren't 100% reliable, obviously.
There's such nebulousness. And this is in a situation, so I'm now pinch hosting for a sports talk show for a couple of days, and just trying to figure out where we lie between keeping people safe, having sports, and all these different, look, since last we talked, my Lansing Lugnuts introduced the Lemonade League, because last we talked, minor league baseball was officially canceled. We record on Tuesdays, and it was last Tuesday. It feels like so long ago for me. Last Tuesday, minor league baseball season was officially canceled.
Canceled by minor league baseball, incidentally. MLB still hadn't really notified anyone. Finally, you know, the St. Pete finally said enough is enough. We're doing it on our end to cancel the season.
Yeah. A lot of people had questions, and we knew. I mean,
everyone knew.
I honestly can't even believe it. I like when this all started, I just never thought that we would have a season that would get canceled, you know. And I thought, well, you know, it'll be something short, and I couldn't have been more off base, you know, like looking at like just all these teams that have had their seasons canceled, all these players that are out of work now, employees, you know. It's been, you know, really disappointing, you know, and you hate it for the fans, you know. But it's just the situation that we're in right now.
Mick, this is a question that I've gotten a lot in terms of how weird is it? How surreal is it that it's summertime and there's no baseball? Was there a certain day where it just felt, whether it was empty, whatever that feeling was of it's spring, it's summer, it's May, June, July, and you don't have a baseball game to broadcast?
You know, I don't know. I mean, I really have, I guess that part of it to me started when I left spring training, you know, because like I put all this work in to get to this point, and then, you know, JD got sick, and instead of me doing play-by-play with JD, it ends up being Len doing play-by-play, me doing middle innings, and then having Cole come out and be, you know, the color analyst, you know, and then everything lined up. Like it was like, hey, look, I got radio on Friday, I got TV on Saturday, I'm coming back at the end of spring, you know, everything was kind of moving, and then it ended, and I thought, well, this isn't going to last long. We'll get right back at it, and then it's been, you know, but it isn't like there's been this day where I'm thinking like, God, I should be at the stadium today. You know, that really hasn't been the feel for me, because that kind of hit me in the beginning. You know, my thing's been more trying to you know, decipher the real information from what's propaganda or, you know, misinformation. You know, I mean, it's like, I'm just curious. I just don't know, you know, like the mask thing, you know, and how dangerous is this? Is everybody going to die? Or if I get it, am I going to be really sick? Or am I going to be asymptomatic? Or, I don't want to spread it to somebody that would get it, but at the same time, I know we want to get back to work. We want to get back to doing things, so just there really hasn't been that, oh man, it's the 4th of July and I'm normally at a baseball game watching fireworks, because I guess that in my mind, I'm just kind of like already to that point where I understand that. I'm just disappointed that all these seasons got canceled and kind of the situation just for what it is.
Can I tell you what I think has been very powerful with that has been knowing people directly who've gotten sick, talking to an Alex Cohen with the Iowa Cubs and hearing, hey, here's my experience. And he put this out on Twitter, put this out on Facebook and said, I have COVID-19. The Reddit, ask me anything. I'm sick, AMA. Nick Markakis said that he was not going to play because of his conversations with Freddie Freeman. I think a lot of baseball players talking to Freddie Freeman after he got sick and how difficult his battle has been, that brought things home. So I think that what has been the powerful impact is really when you are personally affected, even if it's not you or a brother or sister or a family member, when you start to look around and see somebody else that you can then talk to and say, tell me about it, that brings it home.
Yeah, it also brings up the issue of how well the bubble can ever be constructed, Yeah. And it goes also back to the testing not being 100%. All it takes is one person entering that bubble, and it's going to spread quick, and it's going to be bad. And no matter how great a physical shape someone is in, like a Freddie Freeman, they're still going to be hit hard. And it was kind of really sad to hear the descriptions of what he's going through from other people. He's constantly fatigued. He won't be 100% this whole year. So I just can't imagine moving forward. And we're seeing it happen with the other summer baseball relaunches too. I mean, I'm sure the Lugnuts will take, well, the Lugnuts are not bubbling, are you?
No, we are not dropping in the biosphere.
Yeah, but other teams have, and they've still had issues. You saw, the summer collegiate players playing in Frisco this year, canceling a weekend series because of a positive case in the Frisco front office. You've seen some other cases happening as well in the summer collegiate world. And, to what end are we talking? We're talking about summer collegiate leagues that are drawing at the most 500 fans a game. And in many cases, far fewer than that.
Yeah. Talking to Dan Hasty, who had been the broadcaster of Traverse City.
Yeah.
And so, hey, Traverse City, the broadcaster of the West Michigan Whitecaps first, and their same ownership operates the Traverse City Pit Spitters. Okay, so there's no minor league baseball, but North Woods League has put it into pods so he can just drive up to Traverse City, be their TV broadcaster, and there's an outbreak in that league. And his wife is pregnant, a la Mike Trout's wife. There's a baby coming in about a month or so. So he put it out publicly for the betterment of his family, for the safety of his family. The league is shut down to try to contain. And he said, even if they restart, I can't be here. I'm going right back to my family.
So I think we know, the question is, where does this lead? And whether there will be real baseball this summer in Major League Baseball, and whether these summer collegiate leagues will end up playing a whole season. I wouldn't be putting, what are the Oberman odds? Oberman odds, 50% they report. So he's kind of hit that 25% they actually start the season and 0% they end the season.
Wow.
It's just something, and Mick, you've mentioned this, it's just so difficult to wrap our brains around.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I'm just kind of like, I hate getting the flu, like I've gotten it a couple times over the years where it's been like really bad. One time in spring training, I got it. It was like awful. I had like 104 temperature, so I'm a germophobic, like I've washed my hands and I've been social distancing for a long time, like, I mean, honestly, like if someone's sick, if I get any kind of feel that, like if I'm touching something, I'm on a plane, So I've always been kind of a germophobic, but then there's this part of me that's like, that you still have to like, I had to convince myself of this, over the years, because I was washing my hands so much that I was like, getting stuff in my fingers. And I'm like, you know what? I mean, if you get it, you get it. I mean, like you do your best not to, but you still have to go out and live life. You can't have, it's just the way it is. And the good thing about COVID is it's obvious. It's a lot more people have it, but a lot less people are dying from it. I mean, it was like 250 people died nationally. I mean, it's a lot, but that's more. The flu takes out more people than that. And it's something I pay attention to because I do hate getting sick so much. So maybe it's weakening somewhat. I don't know. Maybe it's just younger people getting it, but eventually we're going to have to deal with the fact that like the flu and like the common cold, this thing's out there, and I'm just wondering when that is. Is that now or is that down the line? Or do they come up with some kind of a cure for it? I mean, is that even possible? Like, is this like they've never come up with a cure for the flu? So they've got some
vaccines.
Yeah, but I mean, 30% of people that take it are okay, and then the other 70% still get it. So, I don't know that but then like polio, I mean, look, they wiped it out. So who knows?
Yeah. I think the issue now is there's research indicating the coronavirus has actually mutated a little bit and gotten stronger, not weaker.
Oh, well, how about that?
The way the research is going, if everyone wore a mask, that would be amazingly efficient. Goldman Sachs says the nation's economy would improve by billions and billions if everyone just wore a mask. So I'm not going to get into the political overtones of that. And God knows I hate masks, but it seems to be pretty easy way to at least deal with this in the short term. And to their credit, you watch the major league players work out. There's a lot of players with masks working out, even on the field. Which says to me they take it as seriously as the rest of us do.
And it's so hot. Like, this week is going to be really hot in Michigan, and we're just starting July. It's going to get hotter and humid. The humidity is going to keep on steaming up. It's going to be really tough to wear your mask out there in the elements. But these are trying times, and coronavirus needs to be discussed because we're talking baseball and how much it's affecting the game. And I said multiple levels. And Kevin, you mentioned not just Major League, but all these other smaller leagues, and the wooden bat leagues, and everywhere trying to get started. All right, that's item number one. Another thing that I wanted to discuss was, within the last week or thereabouts, enormous momentum has built for the Cleveland Indians to change their name, and in the NFL, Washington. So I read Joe Posnanski. I read the whole history of, okay, how did Cleveland get its name in the first place? I don't know how well-versed either of the two of you are, but to my mind, all right, so just to sum it up in a nutshell, do you know how in the 1990s Jurassic Park came out, and suddenly there was the Toronto Raptors and the Ogden Raptors, and every single team was like, why not try dinosaur? Or there were a lot of teams that in the 1990s said, let's utilize the color teal. And so everybody was wearing teal. Okay. So Cleveland, turn of the century, 1901, Cleveland gets an American League franchise. Cleveland had a National League franchise, the Cleveland Spiders. They were owned by brothers who also owned the St. Louis Browns. And whenever you own two teams in the same league, you can steer all your best players from one of those teams to the other, make a super team. Cy Young was a Cleveland Spider. He was a great. All right, let's steer him right to St. Louis. So what it made was St. Louis was great, and the Cleveland Spiders were bad, really bad, so bad that they went 20 and 134 and lost 40 out of their last 41 games. Then they shut down. That was the last year of the National League Cleveland Spiders. The Spiders had a player from 1897, 1898, 1899 named Louis Sockalexis. 1897, he was great, and then alcoholism is blamed for his downfall. He only played about 7 games in 1899. He was Penobscot Indian. Okay, let's fast forward. Nap Lajoie becomes the star of the Cleveland American League team starting in 1903. At the time, teams didn't have nicknames. You named your team after whatever, the color that you wore. So you could call yourself the Cincinnati Reds. striped socks if you're the Detroit Tigers, the Boston Red Sox, etc. Cleveland called itself the Naps because Nap Lajoie was their best player. What happens to great players? They get bad. So Nap Lajoie, after a decade or so, got run out of town as the manager player. He was no good anymore, so they had to rename their team. At one point, it was Jim McGuire who ran them. They called themselves the Cleveland Molly Maguires. They named their team the Cleveland Orphans. They named their team the Cleveland Blues. They named their team whatever they could come up with. And then round about 1915, they decided we need an actual official name. In 1914, the Boston Braves went from last place to first place and won the World Series. And so folks, when they started to come up with what should our Cleveland name be, the Braves were hot. Native American imagery was, they're on top of the world. They're popular. They're the Miracle Braves. Boom, Cleveland Indians. Because somebody had thought, back in the late 1890s, there was a great player who played for the Spiders one year, and he was Indian. And they kind of got nicknamed the Indians because of him in 1897, 1 year. But really it was to tie them in with the Boston Braves. And from that nebulous, hey, this is super hot as a fad right now in 1915, that stuck all the way up until this very day. And then there was Bill Veeck giving them the grotesque caricature in the 1940s. Out of all the great things that Veeck did as a promoter, they had the Block C up until the 1940s. And then he came up with really a terrible, like the current version of Chief Wahoo is a terrible caricature. That was worse if you go back and look at it. And so I apologize for talking both of your ears off, but that is why they were the Cleveland Indians, was simply because the Boston Braves had just won the World Series.
And the newspapers loved the idea of the Indians because they had all these chants to do, and it would get the fans all riled up, warpath crap, things like that. But the whole backloading of the named after an actual Indian came in the 60s. It was in 1968 when the first time the Indians actually said, well, we're named for this, our former Indian player.
Who never played for them.
The tradition.
He never played for them. He played one good year, and that was it.
He played 94 games total. He had a brief year with flashes of brilliance and then sadness.
By the way, the Washington Redskins also about to change their name, probably much, much more likely, I would say, than Cleveland.
Very soon, I guess.
Yes. Why are they named what they are? Because they were the Boston Braves. Here's our tie-in with the Boston Braves. They played at the same field as the Boston Braves, because at the time, football teams didn't draw fans. You had to promote yourself based on baseball. Hence, the New York Giants, the St. Louis Cardinals, the Brooklyn Dodgers, and the New York Yankees were all teams. And then they started playing their games at Fenway Park. And the Boston Braves got angry, and they said, if you're going to play at the home of our rival, the team that's taking away all of our ticket money, change your name. So they just changed their name to a name they considered was synonymous with Brave.
And then the team moved. George Preston Marshall kept the name, kept the brand. And it was on brand for him because he was pretty.
Last team to integrate.
Last team to integrate, and only because Bobby Kennedy said, you're going to integrate or else you're not going to play at the new stadium.
So I think it's important to look back upon team name origins. Team name origins are not all that cloaked in, I would say, specialness. The Pittsburgh Pirates are named the Pirates because they stole players. They stole one specific player who then was terrible for them. And that because of the years and years and years, we get very tied in with these teams. Like, Mick, I know you're a big Baltimore Ravens fan. Washington is my team. I'm burgundy and gold in the NFL. But I think it's really good to understand where the history comes from, and it's not always about honor. But over the years, as the years pass by, you associate that team with all that you stand for because you love them so much.
Yeah, I'm a Ravens fan. It was a poet. My dad was a Redskins fan growing up. I was a Cowboys fan just because I wanted to be on the other side of the Redskins. They've never been one of my teams, but yeah, I always blame them for Baltimore not having a team. I don't know if that was fair, but as a kid,
oh, you're right.
Absolutely true.
Yeah. So, but I don't know. I guess when I think of Redskins, I think of like John Riggins, like I think of like the Hogs, like, those big offensive linemen dressed up like, like ladies with the little noses,
The Hogettes.
Yeah, the Hogettes. Yeah. Like I mean, with everything going on, it doesn't surprise me that now's the time where we're talking about this. But even though the Redskins have never been my team, I've never had like a negative connotation to it. I mean, I always thought like Redskins like proud and like a really good franchise and then I grew up with Native American kids that were Redskins fans. So I mean, if it was that offensive, they probably wouldn't have. They'd probably been a Cowboys fan with me, right? but but that's not the case. So I'm curious to see what's going to happen. I love the story. So I mean, like. I didn't know all that about the Indians. I was a fan of the Indians because of the movie Major League. Like when that came out, I had to get the hat and the jacket. I still have an Indians Ricky Vaughn jersey that like for Halloween and stuff. Put the glasses on. So, but there's a lot of things going on right now, and and for teams, I mean, maybe you do it just not to have to deal with all of the the controversy, and maybe it's a good marketing thing to change your name anyway. I don't know. I have no answer to this.
We
All I
actually
can tell you
to that, don't we, Jesse?
all I can say though is just kind of finishing up this thought is that it's, as a broadcaster, these are really tough topics for me because I never want to be too opinionated on stuff like this, because I don't want the people that love the Redskins to hate me, and I don't want the people that are offended to hate me. I just don't want to be involved in it. It's like let them do what they're going to do. Well, I'll call them if they want to be a jumbo shrimp, or they want to be a sun, or they want to be a a biscuit. Like I don't care. That's their decision to make. But that's probably a better topic for CNN and Fox and all those guys. You know what I'm saying? Like the whole kind of like where you stand on that. But that on the other side, I think it's pretty cool, like how they got to where they're at.
There's the broadcaster Jerry Howarth, who was formerly the voice of the Toronto Blue Jays. I remember hearing for years that however long ago, a fan wrote to him, First Nations fan in Canada, said, I would prefer that you did not say Indians, and here's why. I wrote him out a handwritten note and said, here's what it means to me, and here's why I'd prefer you didn't say it. And so Jerry Howarth thought about that, and he said, I'm not really losing anything by just saying Cleveland. All my listeners, people likely aren't going to notice. I'm still calling the games. So if this one person is more comforted if I don't, and off we go. And so for years, Toronto played Cleveland when Jerry Howarth was on the radio calling Blue Jays games. And I've had one of my favorite teams change its nicknames before because I'm a Washington Wizards fan.
Example.
Washington Bullets, and Abe Poland changed the name, and now they're the Wizards. So I asked my brother and my cousin, and my brother and I laugh about this, and my cousin said, I still don't like the name Wizards. But we have the experience of the name change, as have a lot of colleges, right? There were St. John's changed its name, and there were a number of different universities and high schools who've all made the switch over the course of the years.
Yeah, at UND, they were sort of forced into it by the NCAA. They were the Fighting Sioux.
Yes.
Ralph Engelstad built an arena for the university hockey team, embedded hundreds of Fighting Sioux logos to pressure them never to change the name. The NCAA said, fine, you find a majority of Sioux tribes within the state to endorse this, you can keep the name, which happened at Florida State, by the way. The Seminoles signed off. In North Dakota, they didn't sign off at all. And UND still refused to change the name. Finally, the NCAA said, no tournament games for you in any sport unless you change the name. And then finally they did. And then they found the world didn't end without the Fighting Sioux imagery, the war chants, I mean, there's a statue of a chief in front of the arena still, but the university can't touch it. And it's a nasty legacy in the wrong hands, to be totally honest. It's just a terrible thing. And there's money to be made in a rebranding anyway. I know people have a love for the history of the team. The Hogs aren't Redskins. Bring back the Hogs. Go back to the RFK Stadium site with a new stadium that looks like the old RFK, and embrace the great things. Mick, you're absolutely right. John Riggins, Joey Theismann, embrace the great football teams of that franchise.
I broadcast games for the Central Michigan Chippewas, who work very closely with the Chippewa tribe. When I went to Spokane, I made sure that I got a baseball cap. They work very closely.
They work really closely.
They're really good relationships that if a team works on it, that they can develop locally. And let's be honest, for all of us, Mick, for you, the teams that you work for, and whether it's the Smokies, whether it's the Chicago Cubs, the team is embraced by the community. The Cubs are Chicago. The Smokies are wherever you are. If that team is not part of that community feel, then that team is doing a lot of things wrong.
Yeah, and they are. Like I hear from people that love the Cubs and love the Smokies and miss the Smokies a lot. Like been kind of surprising. Because it doesn't always feel like during the course of a minor league season that people really care that much. But they do, and they miss it. And you're right. I mean, part of that is having a tie with the community. You talked about the what would you say, the Lemonade League? The Smokies have a high school baseball league that they've been running, and it's done well. I was talking to Chris Allen today, the team president, and he was saying, hey, look, this thing went well. We had some people here for fireworks, and they said, I guess they had them social distanced, but enough where they had a pretty good July 3rd, and they have another month left of their season, with high school seniors playing. So he said it felt like the All-Star game, which I know is something you guys want to talk about, was the third. And he said it felt like a Smokies game. Maybe not a Saturday Smokies game, but a Smokies game. Which was pretty cool.
And they're creating a whole new generation of fans.
Yeah.
Doing this.
On that note, July the 6th, 1933 was the very first Major League Baseball All-Star Game. Got my baseball thesaurus right here. The All-Star Game, the Showcase of Stars, the Midsummer Classic. Why was it in Chicago? Why was it at Comiskey Park? Because the Chicago Tribune sports editor, Arch Ward, organized the game as part of the World's Fair in Chicago for that year. And what better thing to do, what better exhibition than to bring in the greatest stars of baseball. Bring Babe Ruth in, bring Lou Gehrig in, bring the National League's best, have everybody playing on one field. I love the stories from the very first All-Star Game.
Yeah, it was originally just a one-time deal. It was not supposed to be a permanent exhibition series. And it was also a way to sort of revitalize interest in baseball. Overall, we think of that era as one of the golden ages of baseball, but at the box office, it was not. It was actually, attendance had been slumping in recent years, and interest across the board in the sport was waning. And so, you mentioned Arch Ward. He was working with this. He was the sports editor at the Chicago Tribune. He was directed by Colonel McCormick, owner of the Tribune, to help organize a game, to bring back baseball. And by God, Arch did. And what do you know? It survived not only that for the next year, but as an institution.
Yeah, one of the greatest exhibitions of all time, too. The fact that they started it while there was still Babe Ruth, where you could have Babe Ruth in your first game, and you look at those lineups. Baseball had star power. The biggest problem that baseball had was the Depression, which is kind of like what we're dealing with now in a different way, but, like circumstances that are outside of the control of what people, look, if you're not eating, you're not worried about paying money to see a baseball game, if you're not working, you don't have money to do that, so this All-Star game, like you said, part of the World's Fair was just this huge exhibition, and here's Babe Ruth and all the rest of those guys, some of the greats of all time, like Hall of Famers all over the place, and legends. So, yeah, I think I've always loved the All-Star game. That's one thing that I'm going to miss about this year because we're not going to have an All-Star game. I love watching the All-Star game, the home run derby. There's been years where I'll come down here, near to the beach and go somewhere and watch it. There's a bar called the Hangout that's in Gulf Shores, and the Josh Hamilton home run derby. I watched it on their giant screen outside and this area out there. It was one of the best fan moments that I can remember having, and I'm watching him and pulling for him, and just the display of the whole thing. Plus we all get off in the minor leagues for that, to watch the All-Star game. So I'm a big fan. I wish they would have never stopped doing the winning team gets a home field advantage. I loved it because it made the game worth something. Pete Rose, running over, Ray Fosse and to win the All-Star game. Maybe he didn't have to do it. I don't know, but it's still the fact that these guys played that game so hard and so intense. We watch the NBA All-Star game and it's a joke. Like it's the hockey one's the same way. There's no, no one really plays defense. No one really cares. The baseball one, I feel like we also talk about the All-Star game and players that did something special in the All-Star game. Like Bo Jackson hitting a home run, Ronald Reagan's on the, as Vince Scully's guest, and you could just go. There's all these. Every game kind of has that moment. Maybe some not as big as Reggie Jackson hitting it over the Tiger Stadium air conditions. On the on top of the roof. But those things we still talk about. I don't think that there's ever been an NFL Pro Bowl, an NBA All-Star game, or an NHL All-Star game that I can really remember anything about.
Where I disagree with you is I think the NBA fixed it because this year they added in the Elam ending. And I think that changed everything. That the Elam ending is revolutionary for basketball. By a Cincinnati Reds groundskeeper, no less, and Nick Elam. But the baseball All-Star game, every single year, I recorded it on VCR because the game didn't matter to me as much as the individual one-on-one matchups. If I could watch Randy Johnson versus Barry Bonds, if I could watch Pedro Martinez against Mark McGwire in his prime, or any of those, you just show me that pitcher versus hitter, that Bonds going deep and Torrey Hunter robbing him, whatever it might be, that Cal Ripken Jr. stepping up to home plate against the Atlanta Braves best, against Glavine or Maddox or Smoltz. I love that it's such a snapshot of the best hitters and pitchers in the game at every moment.
Yeah.
I've been to 2 All-Star games. One was especially memorable because it was Derek Jeter's last All-Star game, and that was the one at Target Field. And boy, when he came up to bat for the first time in the first inning, it was a standing ovation. The crowd was going nuts, and you didn't have to be a Derek Jeter fan to realize that it was the end of an era, and he was a player who carried himself with grace and represented the game well and deserved every honor he had received. And it was a very moving sort of thing, even though I'm not a Jeter guy.
The great thing to me is think about a movie where you've got not one, but multiple great actors. And these great actors get to act with each other. So they're lifting each other up because they get to play off of each other and they make each other better and the movie becomes a classic. That, to my mind, when we get to see great talent against great talent, that's where we get to truly appreciate just how skilled these guys are. Like, it's a celebration of how good baseball can be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something special about it too. Like the Cal Ripkins and the Brooks Robinsons and, the Rhinos, these guys that are just like an institution at a certain position, I can remember Cal Ripken comes out, he's going to play third base. And I think was it A-Rod? And he's like, no, you're playing shortstop, And they right in the middle, like everybody just stands there. It's like, this is for you today, and the best thing about baseball is that we honor the great players. They could be on the team that we hate the most in the game, like Derek Jeter. You know, if you're an Orioles fan, you're not a Yankees fan, right? But you're a Jeter fan. You're like, man, this guy does it the right way, you know? And I'm watching Nolan Ryan, you know, like his last year, or Greg Maddux, you know, like the respect that you earn, a lot of that comes from people seeing you in the All-Star game, you know, like you kind of get this reputation, and then there's Tony Gwynn out there, you know, like that those guys make the game to me, you know, when it's like, hey, Mike Trout's that guy now, right? He's going to be in the All-Star game. He's going to be in center field, and you might not get to see him a lot, but you're going to see him that day. And then we're going to be talking about seeing Mike Trout, you know, years and years from now, just like you are with Jeter. I love that about baseball. We just respect our guys so much.
Well, when I was a kid, you know, you're exactly right about that. Growing up in rural Minnesota, we saw Twins games, not every one. We saw whoever was going to be in the NBC game of the week, and that was literally it in terms of seeing players. And so All-Star game, that was your time to see Hank Aaron. That was your time to see all the greats of the National League for American League City. And that was the time when the rest of the nation finally saw Rod Carew. You know, no one saw Rod Carew in the National League. And the Twins were never on the game of the week because they were, you know, at best a 500 team for so many years. So we take for granted now how much exposure there is for players in the game. But that's one of the great legacies of the All-Star game, is that it exposed a whole bunch of players to whole new audiences in a time when information was a very limited commodity.
I mean, as a kid, forget even the players. I liked seeing the uniforms because there were some uniforms I had not seen. I remember it was 1993. It was the first year of the Marlins and the Rockies. And I couldn't wait for Andres Galarraga or Gary Sheffield to get up there, because then I could see what a Rocky or a Marlin looked like.
Yeah, I miss that about the game. I mean, I know I sound like an old, you know, get off my lawn guy, you know, but there was something cool about when the National League played the National League and the American League played the American League, only in the All-Star game in the World Series. And it's because what you're saying, you know, like you didn't get to see you know, in Baltimore, we didn't get to see the Rockies and the Marlins and all these teams. You know, it was kind of just, you got to see the West Coast teams, you got to see the East Coast teams, you know, and like a lot of Yankees and Red Sox games. But once in a while, you know, it would be exciting that maybe Oakland would be in town. And then you get to these All-Star games, and boom, this is when you get to see the uniforms of the teams that aren't on television. Now every game's on television. Every team plays every team, you know, like the interleague plays all the time. They're taking my pitchers away from, you know, and putting DHs in both leagues. And I got this sneaking feeling that we're never going to see a pitcher bat again.
We won't.
Totally off subject, guys.
I mean, you remember when Joe Madden forgot his DH, or he put two players in the same position, so Andy Sunstein was forced to bat in that game? Something ridiculous. The team's going to lose its DH, but by and large, you're right. I want to go back to Mike Trout real quick in praise of Mike Trout, because I'm perpetually watching the All-Star game with other people, and I'm a loudmouth sometimes. And so whenever certain guys get up there, certain pitcher takes over on the mound, certain batter steps in, I'm excitedly shouting to everyone, this guy's great, watch this guy, watch this guy. So I just pulled up Mike Trout's stats, because I know each All-Star game he gets up there and I'm shouting, best player in baseball, watch this. Okay, 2012, a walk and a single in 2 plate appearances. 2013, a double. 2014, a double, a triple, 2 runs batted in. 2015, he homered. He also drew a walk. 2016, he singled. 2018, he homered again. Like, the guy does not let you down against the best pitchers on the other side.
Mm-mm. Hey, if he was a Yankee, he'd be the biggest face in any sport. I mean, it's a shame, because I've always liked the Angels. You know, we're talking about Rod Carew, you know, and Bobby Grich and all those guys, you know, back in the day. But I mean, they're just kind of hidden away, and it's crazy because the Dodgers are just one of the biggest franchises. And if he was a Dodger, everybody would be talking about him. But you're right, Jesse. Like when there's a spotlight on, the guy always performs.
It's a joy to talk about the best players, the best of guys, and it's fun to think about right now. We've talked about the future before. There is something tantalizing to me about, let's say we do get major league games this year, and because of the 60-man player pools, there's Spencer Torkelson in Tigers camp, or there are these teenagers throughout, that there is this potential with this weird, unprecedented year for new players to emerge and for new, young future stars to say, hey, look at me, before we go into a full year next year, hopefully.
I hope so. It'll be really fascinating to watch. You know, if you've been watching the signings, there have been a few players signed that could actually impact this year besides Spencer. I mean, the Marlins pick number 3, Max Meyer, who I watched actually at the U of M this year, University of Minnesota this year. He's ready to pitch in the majors now. He may not be around for 10 years because he's like 6 feet tall, and you know, there's questions whether he's durable enough. But man, he could step in right now and he could pitch for the Marlins and be effective.
It's something I missed from back in the day was guys would get drafted and go right to the major league team, right? You would
Remember
take
Eddie
a guy,
Bain?
pop him in.
Remember Eddie Bain? There's a reason, you know, because the Twins drafted him on Arizona State. Eddie flopped.
But there's Jim Abbott. There are other guys. It's
More better
Mike
example.
Leake. Mike Leake.
Yeah. He was the last one, wasn't he?
I think
he came up with a trivia question as the last one. So we'll see probably 3 or 4 this year at some point.
It's interesting. On that note, gentlemen, thank you very much for another instructive, insightful, good week. I enjoy both of your company on this Ballpark Digest Broadcaster Chat. Mick Gillispie, any final thoughts?
No, guys, just enjoyed it too. Pretty excited. I'm going to be back at Smoky Stadium next week to speak to a group there. So it'll be nice to kind of just get back there for even just a couple days and, you know, and get around the game a little bit, you know, and hopefully some things start to change. And now that we got a schedule out, you know, we'll have some kind of involvement here coming up. So fingers crossed.
Kevin Reichard, final thoughts.
Congrats to Mick for going to a ballpark soon. I'm at my Minneapolis place, and I was debating about whether to drive by Target Field later to see if I could listen to the bat, to the crack of the bat a little bit. But I'd probably be very sad. So I won't. But you know, everyone hang in there. It'll surely get better. It'll get different, but it'll get better.
Yeah. And in Lansing, we'll try to turn lemons into lemonade. We'll see how that goes. For Kevin Reichard, for Mick Gillispie, I'm Jesse Goldberg-Strassler. This has been your Ballpark Digest Broadcaster Chat.